On the bench, we educate, advocate, and inform you on peace, security, and dangers related to violence. Every week, we have interesting topics to discuss. Our guests are highly informed. Gambia is the homeland of peace. Let's teach the world peace. Follow Alassana Justice Diallo every other Friday from 4 to 5 p.m. For sponsors and partners, contact 369-0164 or 272-3819. Hello, the Peace Talk Show is back on the bench. We educate, advocate, and inform you on peace, security, and dangers related to violence. Every week, we have interesting topics to discuss. Our guests are highly informed. Gambia is the homeland of peace. Let's teach the world peace. Follow Alassana Justice Diallo every other Friday from 4 to 5 p.m. For sponsors and partners, contact 369-0164 or 272-3819. Hello, the Peace Talk Show is back on the bench. We educate, advocate, and inform you on peace, security, and dangers related to violence. Every week, we have interesting topics to discuss. Our guests are highly informed. Gambia is the homeland of peace. Let's teach the world peace. Follow Alassana Justice Diallo every other Friday from 4 to 5 p.m. For sponsors and partners, contact 369-0164 or 272-3819. Hello, the Peace Talk.
Hello, good afternoon, wherever you're watching us. This is the Peace Talk Show, the weekly show that is brought to you to discuss on issues surrounding our national peace and security. This Friday, we are once again back in the studio to discuss on a very fundamental issue. As you know that these weeks, we are actually focusing on the Casamance conflict and its relation to the Gambia. So basically today in the studio, we have retired Major Kebba Gibba and also Mr. Essa Njie, who is a lecturer at the University of the Gambia. We are here to discuss on a very important topic. But before we go further, Mr. Gibba, you're welcome.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Jallo, for inviting us once again.
Thank you. Mr. Njie, you're welcome.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me to at least participate in a discussion that is very central to the peace and stability of not only the Gambia, but the Senegambia as a sub-region, but also, I mean, not only Senegal, but even Guinea-Bissau. Not only is this central to the stability of these three countries, but also the development of the three countries, and as far as fostering relations between the three countries is also concerned. So I am glad to be part of this platform.
Thank you very much. It's going to be an interactive discussion today because whenever Mr. Njie is available, actually he will be speaking from, so I said, the theoretical perspective, the academic perspective, and Mr. Gibba or retired Gibba actually will be speaking from both theoretical and practical perspective. So in this regard, I will be here to pose uncomfortable questions on them. But guess what? They actually have answers to all my questions, and you will learn better. Don't worry. Mr. Njie, before we go further to the topic which is a consequence of Casamance conflict on the Gambia security, actually, what is your analysis, just a little bit, to the Gambia's internal security?
Okay, interesting question. I think I will answer this and relate it to the Casamance conflict, looking at a historical background of the Casamance conflict itself. Well, if you have read materials or literatures on Gambia, you realize that, prior to the attainment of political independence in 1965, there were discussions surrounding integrating the Gambia and Senegal. And this was something that was not welcomed by authorities in the Gambia. The United Nations had to set up a team of experts to investigate, to find out the possibility of integrating, or what are the possibilities of having these two countries either integrated full or having them to have a confederation set up. You know, the experts made their recommendations, and of course integration was an option, but the Gambian authorities were never interested in such, because they wanted a sovereignty and fully sovereign and politically independent Gambia, even though skeptics were out there who doubted whether the Gambia could survive as an independent nation state. But we defied all odds and became an independent nation state from 1965. Senegal was keen or interested in having that rapport, that integration with the Gambia. But then a confederation came in 1982. But a year before that, we had a disturbance in the Gambia, which was a failed coup led by Kukoy Samba Sanyang on July 30th, 1981. And of course, Senegal, under the leadership of Abdou Diouf, had to invoke the defense agreement or the security agreement that was signed between the Gambia and Senegal. When he invoked this, even though there were oppositions in Senegal, including Abdoulaye Wade, who strongly opposed this, some of the opposition parties in Senegal, in fact, argued that the defense agreement or the security agreement that Diouf invoked was actually about, external threats that the two countries could have. It has nothing to do with the internal affairs or internal issues that each of the countries were facing. And Abdou Diouf had to intervene in the Gambia. And of course, Jawara had to succumb to the demand of Diouf and the Senegalese authorities to sign a confederation in 1982, the Kaur Declaration it was called. But formalities and signing of the agreement were made in Senegal. And we had that agreement, but then certainly, then when that agreement was signed, the confederation was signed, the Gambia did not have a standing army at the time, people have to understand. And that was why it was easy for Senegal to come in and help and restore Jawara in power. But since then, I think Gambia's security situation has been very fragile. It was only in 1984, I think, if Gibba can correct me, that we were able to have a standing army. And moving forward, that was why in 1994, when we had the military coup, Senegal could not intervene this time around, not only because the confederation had collapsed, but also because the Gambia had a standing army. In 81, we did not have a standing army. Senegal was not expecting any kind of confrontation between them and the Gambian field force at the time. But in 1994, we already have a standing army. Senegal knew very well that if they should intervene, there was going to be fighting. There was going to be confrontation between them. And that was how Jammeh succeeded in this coup. But then it reveals one thing, the geographical situation of the Gambia, being surrounded by Senegal on three sides, only the Atlantic, except the Atlantic Ocean, tells a lot about our security situation. Having from 1994 coming to 2016, Senegal was always looking for an opportunity to, quell the crisis in the Casamance region, the southern region of the country. Gambia's security situation has always been fragile. But like I said, linking this to the 1982, rebellion in Casamance, because it was in 1982 that the rebellion started in Casamance, violent rebellion for that matter. If you look at the MFDC historically, it has been existing since 1944. Founded by Emil Bajan and Ibu Jallo. These were teachers at the time who established or founded the MFDC. But it was only in 1982 when the violent rebellion broke out. This was in December 26th, when there were protests in Ziguinchor. And then, it was crushed violently by the Abdou Diouf regime, which was just a year or so, or less than a year in office. I think a year or so in office at the time when he succeeded Senghor. So from then, the conflict has always been going on. And the Gambia and of course Guinea-Bissau are actors in this conflict, actors in the sense that they could be mediators in the conflict, but also because of the geographical situation of the two countries. I mean, Guinea-Bissau is around Casamance, bordered with Senegal in the Casamance region. Gambia also bordered with Senegal in the Casamance region. So there have always been suspicion in Dakar that the Gambia, under Yahya Jammeh had always connived or has always been aiding the rebels in their fight against Senegal. But interestingly, which I think we will get to, this suspicion has changed now, has shifted from Dakar being suspicious that Jammeh or Gambia was aiding the rebels. Now it is the rebels under the leadership of Salif Sadio, suspicious that the Gambia is on the side of the Senegalese authorities in the whole conflict.
Senegal being suspicious, but now the rebels actually have been suspicious on the Gambia. Actually, that Gambia is actually hosting their enemies, that is the Senegalese forces, right?
Yeah.
To come or to launch an attack against them. And I think, I saw one statement of Salifu saying that if actually Gambia should host Senegalese to actually launch an attack on them, actually, if they are to also retaliate, they will retaliate. And for him, he said he's a very dangerous fighter.
Well, dangerous in the sense, I think no one is trying to undermine the strength of the MFDC, but I think also one has to be conscious that the Gambia is a sovereign state with, of course, a standing army. No one will want a confrontation between the Senegalese, between the rebels and the Gambian authority. But I think Gambia had little to do with the Casamance conflict. I think the rebels are more interested in the Senegalese forces rather than the Gambia. Of course, what the rebels are also very uncomfortable with is Senegal using the Gambia as a launch pad to attack the rebels. So of course Senegal is relying, because we also have to understand, that is why I've always been questioning the Gambia's strategic foreign policy towards Senegal. Senegal has a very clear strategic foreign policy towards the Gambia, dating back to, before the independence. Remember the Mutual Defense Agreement or Pact that I mentioned here, but also even looking at the Confederation, because if you look at the Confederation, part of the objectives of the Confederation was security. Security issues. So, Senegal had always been interested in putting an end to the Casamance conflict. Of course, the Gambia could be a part, because that is the shortest way they could get to the rebels. And when the change of government came in 2016, 2017, with the intervention of economic forces, Senegal saw that as an opportunity, and that is why they are the ones present in the Foyi region, which is also very risky as far as security
come to that.
is concerned.
In fact, Mr. Njie, we will come to that. Let me ask a retired major with this question. It is said that Gambia is a sovereign country, but it's rather unfortunate that Gambia's security is on the hands of other countries. What is your take on that?
Well, Mr. Jallo, thank you for this question. And as far as the security is concerned, and my understanding, the practical aspect of the security, these are just perhaps people perception. That the Gambia being a sovereign state is in the hands of the Senegalese or other foreign forces. You have to also understand that we have the Ghanaians, contingents are here. We have also the Nigerians contingents as well. So this is a peacekeeping. It's a peacekeeping, and they have a mandate. The mandate is to ensure that they protect the seat of power. Because there was this suspicion that the army, the Gambian armed forces, is divided in that posture. So therefore, having a peacekeeping that is going to be in between, in the buffer zone, to protect the seat of power until at such a point that the Gambian security forces would have the proper posture to take over the security. Okay, that is, and another aspect is when people are also having this perception that the president, that is the seat of power, but you have to understand the economic mandate is to protect the seat of power. Okay, however, there are also the Gambian security, team. That is also, as of now, we have a Gambian team that is overall taking charge of the president's security. So we have a segment of that is who the principal protection officer, who is the Senegalese principal protection officer of the president. It's a Senegalese, but you have the commanding officer, who is also the commanding officer of a battalion of the State Guard Presidential Unit. Is in charge. He's in charge of his troops. Even the president's security lies in his hand. He's responsible, unless otherwise that if he is to relinquish his responsibilities. But the responsibility of the president's security lies in the hands of the Gambian, military. This is why when you are seeing if you go to the State House, you see it's a mixture. It's a mixture because of the perception of the army is divided armed forces. But in my previous discussion, I told you, the military usually is responsible for the state security in terms of when it comes to territorial or the external aggression. But by our mandate, the role or relationship between the military and the president is very important. That is why the president is having that title of the commander-in-chief of the armed forces. Like sometimes I hear commander-in-chief of armed and security services. That is bogus. It's the commander-in-chief of the armed forces. So the commander-in-chief of the armed forces, as enshrined in the constitution, is the power vested by the president to, having the authority to control the armed forces. That is the commander-in-chief. So being that he is directly linking with the chief of defense staff, he has, if he wants, he can direct the commander, the chief of defense staff, as and when the army needs to, take charge of certain issues.
Yes. Okay. Mr. Major Gibba, let's look at this thing straightforward. We actually have people in some parts of the West Coast region, that is the Fonyi region, or even generally in the country, people are confused, understand? Thank you for answering that part of the question, because understand, others are saying that the president's security is in the hand of the Senegalese or even foreign forces, which actually is actually not a pride to the Gambia and not even a motivation. But let's say, for instance, now, okay, the economic actually are here and they have a mandate. Last week, I hosted the MP of Fonyi Councillor, Honorable Almame Gibba. Actually, he was here, and some of his statements on what the situation in Fonyi, that is the security situation, is actually, a threat to the people of Fonyi.
Well, that one, my colleague, said it, that the Casamance conflict, Gambia has been an actor, has been a main actor beside Bissau. Since 1982, when the war broke. We have the late General Ansoumana Mane, whom the Senegalese government were also accusing of aiding the rebels by supplying their weaponry, because they believe Ansoumana Mane was inside of the rebels. Likewise, Jammeh was also accused of aiding the Senegalese by giving supplies of ammunition to the rebels. But even before that, during Jawara's administration as well, there was that strange relationship between Gambia and Senegal at some point. And Gambia being, and then that rebellion was then at its peak during Jawara's administration. So yet the government of Senegal were also alleging, were in fact very suspicious of the Gambia's involvement. When Abdou Diouf came in, Senghor has this approach of not encouraging, not letting Gambia much in the conflict. But when Abdou Diouf came in, he was also very repressive. But along the line, he knows that using military means was not sufficient enough to quell, to bring peace. What he did was to go to the table, round table, to discuss the issues. This is where we have this Banjul 1, Banjul 2, and Banjul 3. Banjul 1 and 2 and 3, where those negotiations were held in Banjul, with a means of having a lasting solution. And eventually, Gambia's, when Ablawara came in 2000, he also took a similar approach. But decided to keep the actors, the main actors, that is Bissau and Gambia, in the conflict, from the conflict, and was making a direct interaction with the rebels, with the MFDC. And the MFDC were having about 3 factions: the political wing led by Labe Gebakul Senghor, and the military wing in Casamance, they call it Atika. In Jola, that is a warrior. They have 3 factions. That is one by Kamige Jata, the other one by you have Bajate, and you have the other one with Baji, who Salif Sadio succeeded after his demise. So these are 3 factions. So these factions were, unfortunately, were in the between Bissau and Gambia borderlines. And when you look at the position of Casamance and the Gambia southern, the West Coast region of the Gambia, these are ethnic akin, to the conflict. These are the 2 people who, the 2 ethnic who are very related. And the Casamance conflict, according to the Senegalese government, they see it as a conflict between the ethnic Jola ethnic groups and the state of Senegal, and the Senegalese government. So and then unfortunately or fortunately, like I said, Gambia in the West Coast region, that stretch is also found another the same ethnic group. These are the people who are who have high relations. So therefore, the Senegalese labeling the Casamance conflict as affair Jola or Jola affair in French, l'affaire Jola. That is the affairs of the Jolas.
Yes.
Not looking at the Gambian, the geo and the social life of the people in the West Coast region are the same people of that. So it's like you touch me, my brother, I will not be happy. So all this conflict as recent as the 2021, in fact this 2022, the Senegalese conflict with the MFDC, it affected, like you said, the consequence, it affected the people. When you look at the balance, these are the areas that are very, very close to the other part of.
In fact, I will come to that. In fact, I want to ask Mr. Njie with that question. Hello, you're watching us live online. This is the Peace Talk Show, the weekly program that is brought to you to discuss on issues surrounding our national peace and security. On my right-hand side, I have retired Major Gibba, and on my left-hand side, I have Mr. Essa Njie. We are discussing on the consequence of Senegalese or Casamance conflict on the Gambia security. Mr. Njie, don't you think the Gambia is at the brink of actually experiencing attacks from the Casamance rebels? Because what we have seen is that the rebels actually, had a fight with the Senegalese forces around their recent fight. And all of a sudden, they actually pursue the soldiers until in the Gambian territory, and they launched a checkpoint at Bajagar. And this checkpoint was there for hours. In fact, the traffic was interrupted. Don't you think, if precautions are not taken or appropriate steps are not taken, Gambia could actually be like in the form of what the Boko Harams are doing in the Nigerian region, where both Nigeria and Cameroon and Chad are suffering from the havocs of Boko Haram? Or when you go to the Central African Republic, also where Uganda and Rwanda and DRC actually are facing that regional conflict, don't you think this MFDC actually can pose the same thing to the Gambia and Senegal and Guinea-Bissau?
I think that question is very harsh and very sensitive. Very harsh and very sensitive to say what is happening in Nigeria, Boko Haram, in Rwanda, LRA, whether the Gambia could experience that from the MFDC. I think that is way too much. I mean, like I said initially, these MFDC rebels have no business with the Gambia. They have business with the Senegalese authorities. What the MFDC is not comfortable with is the Gambia allegedly allowing Senegal to use its territory as a launch pad to attack, to provoke the rebels. If there could have been any trouble, I think it will have happened during the Jammeh era, when Senegal had always been suspicious that the Gambia was aiding with rebels, and that caused instability in the Casamance region. There could have been problem between the Gambia and Senegal. For the MFDC right now, being suspicious that the Gambia is aiding, the Senegalese authorities, I think that is a bit sensitive, but also it reveals to us how the dynamics of the Casamance conflict are changing. From the Gambia being a negotiator at the initial stage, or let's say in the 90s, because this conflict, like I said, started in '82. He said, looking at Abdou Diouf's era, he did not approach that engagement tactic initially. He was using repressive measures. But when Abdoulaye Wade came in 2000, coincidentally, Kumbayala also came to power in 2000 in Guinea-Bissau. Wade decided to keep away these actors and try to approach or engage, use this engagement tactic or strategy, as opposed to his predecessor, Abdou Diouf. So coming all the way to the Macky Sall era, the same strategy continued, the same tactic continued. So I think what could have happened, so the Gambia being an actor in the Casamance conflict actually is being a negotiator, a peace broker. The Gambia could take that role. But like I said, the suspicions have been that the Gambia, instead of being a peace broker, instead of being a negotiator, is actually taking sides from the authorities in Senegal during the Jammeh era, saying that Gambia was aiding the rebels, to now the rebels suspicious that Gambia is aiding the Senegalese authorities in the fight against them. So I think what could happen is, as far as the consequences are concerned, this may not necessarily be a state security consequence. It may not have a consequence on state security. Rather, it could have consequence on human security. Yeah. And when we say human security, what do we mean? The lives and properties of the people that are living in that area, let's say the Foji region, not necessarily on the Gambia as a state, the Gambian state that you could say, oh, the MFDC rebels will start attacking the Gambia. No, that is far from it for now. What we can say is that, of course, even right now, it has security consequences on the people that are living there. The human security consequences have been there. We've seen when a lot of people had to leave their communities, their houses or their villages to come to the Combos, because of the pockets of violence that we have experienced there in the past few months. Like you said, the MP for Councillor came here, and of course he must have narrated to you the series of events, the incidents that happened there that posed security threat. In fact, the parliamentary election, the last parliamentary election, there were questions raised even to the IEC whether elections could take place in that part of the country, in that region, when some of the voters had to leave their communities to come to Combo. So I think the human security implications are already there. It is not only about the people being scared of living there because they could be attacked by the rebels, they could be killed, but also I think it has more to do with their properties. The education of their kids are being disrupted by the conflict. So, but also, like I said initially, the MFDC rebels are, more concerned about the presence of Senegalese forces there. Gambia, one could argue, if the Gambia is really interested in maintaining stability in that region, what they could do is, why not you have other contingents, whether the Ghanaians or the Nigerian contingent present there, than the Senegalese forces. But Senegal also have an interest. Like I said, Senegal has a strategic security interest. And this is part of the broader foreign policy goal of Senegal towards the Gambia. They have an interest, knowing fully well that one headache to the Senegalese government today is the conflict in the Casamance region. Now, Yaya Jammeh is no more there. It's a new government in place, and the economics said we are intervening to maintain stability and all that not. Well, this is an opportunity. Let's get there. To be in that part of the country. But then, like I said, why the conflict has always been, why do we even experience in those incidents, I think, has to do with the economic aspect of it. Because if you look at the Casamance conflict also, we have that economic aspect of it. Of course, the timber trade that happens, in Casamance, the Senegalese want to starve the rebellion. They want to starve the rebels in the region. And they know fully well that they use the timber trade to survive economically. How do you cut that? How do you starve them? That is by discouraging. How do you discourage that? When people come from the Casamance area with their timbers, you chase them and then provoke the rebels. So the rebels will also, that will trigger them to start fighting. And then so this Senegal could achieve its aims in that direction. But like you said, the other aspect of the Casamance conflict, and I think that also has, its implications, security-wise. From that ethnic angle. Since the beginning of the conflict, Casamance conflict, Senegal has always referred, authorities in Dakar have always referred to the Casamance conflict as a Jola affair because of the ethnic orientation of some of the leadership. Of course, the present leader of because MFDC, we also have to understand, has the northern front and the southern front. So the Salif Sadio-led MFDC is the most stubborn camp here, and that is the camp that Senegal is really finding it difficult to deal with. So the Jola affair, the ethnic angle is being looked at here, and of course that is why Jammeh, Senegalese authorities have always accused Yaya Jammeh of having a role to play there. But I think also, if they could get it wrong, if you look at it from that ethnic angle, because in Guinea-Bissau, when they were suspicious of Ansumana Mane was never a Jola, he was a Mandinka. Of course, has his roots even in the Gambia. He has family and relatives in the Gambia. So Ansumana Mane wasn't necessarily a Jola. But when Kumbayala came, it was a good relationship between Senegal and Guinea-Bissau. So I think these three countries have a role to play. Just last month when I went to Ziguinchor for a conference on common security threats in Gambia, Senegal, and Guinea-Bissau, and of course the role of universities as academic actors in resolving the conflict. If you look at the situation, the security situation in Guinea-Bissau or Gambia, and of course Senegal, they're so similar. And I think also what is more important here is for people to look at that human security dimension rather than the state security aspect of it, because it seems like what we have now, even scholars of international relations will tell you we have more of intrastate conflict than interstate conflict. Two countries going to war is very rare. Of course, we have the Ukraine-Russia crisis, but that's an invasion anyway, as some will define it. But we have more of human security threats, and that is why if you look at even the Gambia security sector reform, it rather focuses on human security than state security. So the Casamance conflict, if one is looking at it, as far as its implications is concerned, security implications are concerned, on the Gambia, I think one has to look at it from that perspective, the human aspect, rather than the state aspect, whether Senegal and the rebels could attack the Gambia or not.
Yes. Major, in fact, some people in Foni are saying that the government of the Gambia is very, I'm putting this in quote, very careless towards the situation, security situation on the people of Foni and the West Coast region. Because what happened is that, they are there, but they don't feel like they are part of the Gambia. What actually do you think, from your own perspective, on the manner in which, even though we have the Senegalese there, and also we have Casamance nearby, but what role does the Gambia actually owe to those people living in the Casamance, at the West Coast region there, from Katong to Kalaji, the security situation, how the government of the Gambia should handle it, even though we have the Senegalese there who are very concerned about the situation in Casamance?
Yeah, I think the people of that area, the Foni region, who, have the right to accuse the current government of being very neglectful, or there is negligence, or they don't care of the people's security, in the sense that having a Senegalese contingent given the base in the people, whom their very government, has labeled the their military base in the people whom they are akin when it comes to ethnicity to that people. Until of recent, that was the time that you see now government having coming because of a lot of media has played a very significant role, in ensuring that the armed forces of the Gambia plays, its constitutional mandate, thereby have to consult the battalion from Kanilai to take the lead, to ensure the borderlines are highly protected, that the Gambian contingent have to go and do their role. The Gambian troops have to take responsibilities as enshrined in the constitution. They are to ensure the territorial integrity, is there. So that is why they have played their role. But initially, the government was very negligent in handling the affairs, especially when the conflict, the Senegalese were selling their cells, and it landing in the Gambian territory. In fact, and no condemnation were made by the Gambian government. So that is highly an irresponsible way of handling the security affairs of the country, especially with people.
Bullets were fired from Casamance to the Gambian region, and in fact some bullets were fired in the Gambia, and also checkpoints were mounted in the Gambia. And also we have seen that, in fact, there are some forms of attacks and people were internally displaced. But people actually were pointing a dark finger to the government, saying that the government actually was not playing its responsibility, even though, you have the Casamance conflict. And when people are internally displaced, actually the government has a role to play. And then, like I was asking Mr. Njie, don't you think this can cause a future security threat if they actually, we have seen that now, rebels, selling into the Gambian territory because they actually suspect that their enemies actually use the Gambia as, a safe haven for themselves to actually launch an attack on them or a launching pad.
I think there's a point of correction, not the rebels selling into the and sales landing in the Gambia.
Okay.
This is the Senegalese, the military were selling and sales landing in the Gambian territory.
Who were selling?
The Senegalese troops were the ones selling and it landing in the Gambian territory, not the rebels selling, because he said the Senegalese, they have a superior, when it comes to military, they have a superior might than the rebels at that very moment. And at no point I have not seen the rebels having that kind of weaponry to sell into the Gambian. If it would have happened, it could have happened long since. But for the history of Casamance, I have never, come across the rebels incursion into the Gambian territory because of their base. Their base is not far from the Gambia. The rebel base were not far. I know most of these bases where they are. It's not far. It's just about 2 kilometer or half a kilometer where their bases are.
But that simply means that Gambia has a connection with the rebels.
No, not a matter of connection. This is the rebels put a base in the region that they believe that is theirs. Gambians don't have authority to ask the rebels to move away from that base because it is not part of our territory. So therefore, you don't have any affair. The only thing that you need to tell is you selling lands, and that is the government. Like he said initially, Gambians' position was to mediate, to be a key mediator, but not to be seen siding with a particular group. Like they accused Njie of siding with the rebels. And now the rebels also see that the government is siding with the Senegalese government, thereby giving them a safe haven, to do whatever. But the launching was, Senegalese were launching inside the Casamance territory, and it was landing in the Gambian territory because those calibers are too high. As an experienced military officer, you cannot, certain weaponry cannot put it at a closer, to a particular territory and launching you thinking that it is going to land in your own territory. It was, for me, it was like a deliberate act. Because they knew very well the government is siding with them. So they have no problem with that. When the government government never made any condemnation to the Senegalese authorities that this is, and these are the people. So they thought that the government is not responsible, showing any responsibility as long as their security and safety is concerned.
Government not be showing. Mr. Njie, I'm going to make this a very confusing issue. Gambia was in crisis or in a situation in 1981. Senegal came to our assistance and they restored the Jawara government. And then, as history taught us that in 1964 there was a mutual defense agreement between Gambia and Senegal. I don't know whether my strategy is 1964. You understand? Now, if Senegal is in this situation, I think for the sake of collective security, Gambia should actually force hands with Senegal to make sure that these rebels actually do not have a breeding ground in the region, because they are not only a threat to Senegal, but they are also a threat to the Gambia. And now we have seen this coming up. Do you think this would have been the approach that the Gambia should have taken, or Gambia should have remained to be neutral, not to side with Senegal or not to side with the rebels, but to serve as a mediator?
I think we're mixing apples with oranges here. The 81 coup that you cited, the failed coup, and Senegal intervening to restore President Jawara in power, is quite different. I mean, you have to understand, this is in the context of geopolitics, international relations. International relations is guided by national interests, especially from the theoretical perspective or angle of realism. Senegal had an interest. I think I said that was very clear. Senegal was interested in not only security integration with the Gambia, but also political union, economic and monetary union. This was what Senegal was interested in. If you look at the objectives of the Senegambia Confederation, broadly these are the objectives. But so Senegal had an interest. Why they intervened in the Gambia? It was not necessarily out of the blue. Now, Senegal intervened in 1981 because, one, Senegal was interested in a marriage of convenience with the Gambia, which Gambia was never interested in from the beginning. Now, Senegal knew that this was an opportunity. Let's help because, one, secondly, the Gambia does not have a standing army. We can intervene without having much resistance, okay? And we will succeed. And if we do that, it's just like scratch my back or, help me and I also help you. When we do that, we'll be able to get Jawara to also agree to our proposal. And that was the reason why they intervened. So it was not out of generosity or goodwill of Senegal that they intervened in 1981. It was because of national interest, strategic for that matter. Strategic foreign policy goal was why Senegal had to intervene in 1981. Why didn't they intervene in 94? Because the Confederation had already collapsed in 1989. So they had no interest in 1994 to intervene. But also they knew that if they had intervened in 1994, they were going to face resistance because the Gambia had a standing army at the time. So it was not out of generosity or goodwill that Senegal intervened in 1981. So coming to the role of Gambia, I think Gibba has said that Gambia had played that role of mediator. The Banjul 1, the Banjul 2, if you look at Banjul 1, like I said initially, the rebels are divided. You have the northern front and the southern front. The rebels are divided. Banjul 1 was specifically targeted, was to help bring the rebels under an umbrella so that they could discuss. Because it's very difficult to negotiate with groups that are divided. If you want to negotiate with the rebels and they are divided, you have this camp, you have this camp. Who do you talk to? This was the challenge that the Senegalese government was facing, but also potential mediators like the Gambia, Guinea-Bissau, and even Saint Egidio as an organization, a faith-based organization that has been involved in conflict resolutions and mediation around the world. This was the challenge that they were facing. So they had to organize Banjul 1 specifically to bring these two movements together, to have them under one umbrella so that they can start the negotiation proper. And Banjul 2 was a step towards that. Banjul 3 also came and it led to the signing of MOCA between the two. So Gambia had always been regarded as a country that can play that mediation role, even Guinea-Bissau. But like I said, you also have to understand that this is what we call security dilemma in international relations. It's very difficult for countries to trust each other. You do not know what your neighbor is planning. Senegal cannot just easily trust the Gambia like that to say, okay, we intervened in 1981, we help them, so they will help us in fighting, in putting an end to the Casamance conflict. They don't know what they did. It's just like what we say in IR still, the intentions and actions of policymakers and states cannot be known. What states will say, or policymakers or politicians will say, and what they do can be very different because international relations is guided by what? The pursuit of national interest at all costs. And of course, the same thing could be on the side of the Gambia. Gambia could say, well, if we help Senegal, we don't even know their intention. We help them to put an end to the Casamance conflict. How about if they now want to turn the Gambia to even control the Gambia? But the reason why, so they wouldn't be able to focus on the Gambia because they have a bigger fish. They have a problem that they have to fix. So you have to understand it from this perspective that, it is not necessarily that Senegal, helped the Gambia out of generosity or goodwill, but because of national interest. And Gambia also must jealously safeguard. And that's why I'm a bit troubled by the way the government is treating the issue of Fonyi. I mean, only, not being that proactive, being rather reactive, and even that reaction from the side of the government is not that very effective when it comes to dealing with the problem in the Casamance region. Like I said, the economic mandate or economic mission in the Gambia might be beyond, Gambia government because ECOWAS is involved and all that not. But I think for stability's sake, for security and safety of the people of Fonyi, I think the Gambia government could help to see how best we can bring other contingents there that have no business with the rebels in Casamance. And Senegalese could be somewhere. If you go to Bara, you find these Ghanaian or Nigerian forces there. So why would you go to Casamance, Fonyi region, and have Senegalese forces been present there, and they don't only stop there, but sometimes they chase these people over into Senegal. You ask him a question, don't you think Gambia has a connection with the rebels? In fact, we are saying that it is the rebels that are suspicious that Gambia has a connection or is aiding the Senegalese authorities, not necessarily Senegal being suspicious. So, like he said, Gambia has no authority or no powers to tell the rebels, leave this territory. You see, the way Senegal is claiming ownership of Casamance, it's the same way those MFDC forces are claiming ownership of Senegal, also Casamance.
Yes.
If you look at, if you listen to or watch Salif Sadio's interview, his last interview, he was even saying that Casamance is the only country. He's not even saying region. He said Casamance is the only country that the Gambia is bordered with. Saying that on the eastern side, on the southern side, on the northern side, Gambia is bordered with Casamance, not even Senegal. So meaning Senegal is only situated on the northern side, far end of the northern side, not on the southern side, because the southern side is entirely Casamance. The eastern side is also Casamance. So for him, it is only the northern side, at the far end of the northern side, that Senegal is. So the northern side is divided. You have Senegal up there, and then you have Casamance down here. So the way Senegal, and that is why even the timber issue, there was a time, I mean, last semester, one of my students raised these questions in the class to say, I mean, you can't have a timber trade happening there because it is against Senegalese law. I said, I understand fully well. Senegal is seeing Casamance as part of its territory. So the laws will be applicable there. But that is not how the rebels are seeing it. For the rebels, Senegalese laws cannot be applicable or cannot be applied in the Casamance region, because for them, Casamance belongs to them. So we must understand it from this angle. Yeah, it is not necessarily. You see, states don't do in international relations today. States don't act out of generosity or goodwill. They act in the pursuit of national interest. Where their interest doesn't lie, they are not interested. They don't even bother to go in for it. So Senegal is not necessarily doing a favor to the Gambia. All what is happening, even the mission, even the presence of Senegalese forces in Fonyi, you think they're interested in stability of the Gambia? No. They have an interest, a strategic security interest, and that is how to get these rebels. So people must understand it from that angle.
I think that's why they have to occupy that land, because when you look at the, like he said, Senegal, they have a strategic interest in the Fonyi. This was an issue they have been battling for the past 30 years. And the opportunity came in 2016 when the Kenyan government came in, and that is now we have it. We will not also let the child, to go, away. So therefore, we are going to position. It was not the government of the Gambia that decided where the Senegalese have to be, but the Senegalese, by virtue of their so very smart, they think Fonyi is the most strategic place where they have to stay, and then would now prepare to launch from their part, from the Casamance part in the Ziguinchor, to pursue, because the position of the rebels they are not far from the Gambian territory. So we will launch them, getting closer. We have our other allied forces who are also on another mandate, but when things are not going well, they had to come in. So that is just to ensure the Casamance conflict is killed and wiped out. But it is, it's a different ball game. The Senegalese conflict, I think, is one of the most, and now is one of the longest, conflict, but with lesser casualties as compared to other conflicts.
That is how
yes, how it's lesser.
One of the longest surviving conflicts,
yes,
but with less
and
casualties.
with lesser, and we don't have that kind of human rights violation of that human rights record. So it's very less. So therefore, the Senegalese, they have the interest. That's why you pose a question. The Fonyi also don't trust the government that they brought the Senegalese to give them a base. They could have intervened. They could have said no. If they want a peace in Casamance and Senegal, they could have sent, like he said, deployed a contingent. Either it's going to be a Nigerian, a neutral. Nigeria is very far from the Gambia. We are not bothered. So therefore, the rebels will also know that this is...
they have no interest. They have no security interest.
So therefore, that's what the Gambian government should also play. In the peacekeeping, government will also determine where contingents need to be deployed. I was in the peacekeeping in Darfur. You know, when Omar Bashir was indicted, it was our contingent who were in Darfur. Things were tough. We call it Contingent 6 of the Gambia force under the United Nations African Union Hybrid Force mission. I could give you this real narratives where the rebel commander was of the Justice and Equality movement was arrested by the Sudanese armed forces. That they had to get him arrested, and they would tell even the peacekeepers, the peacekeepers, where to patrol and where not to patrol. So yes, they will tell us, because we are not a fighting force, and the Senegalese troops in the base in Foyi are not also a fighting force. They are to ensure they maintain the peace, to ensure whereas there's perhaps a possible fight, they could come into play. But the Senegalese, when you go to in the northern part, where the Ghanaians are, you have seen how the Ghanaians contributing to the socio-economic lives, changing the lives of people. Have you seen it in the Foyes? Where have you ever had the Senegalese contingent digging a borehole for the people of Foyi? If they want the people of Foyi to trust them, they have to come up with those kind of humanitarian gestures. That yes, these are the contingents who are here not to militarize us, to threaten us, but to make sure they give us what we need. At that stretch line, they have a shortage of water. They could have intervened in those kind of things, just like what Ghanaians are doing, Nigerians are doing. Nigerians are here in the Greater Banjul, but they are also supporting. In medical care, they are helping the neighbors. Neighbors are going to their medical facilities for medical outreach. But in that place, Senegalese troops down there in the Fonyi, they are not there for peacekeeping, but they are there for their strategic interest to be an allied force to the ones in the Casamance. In the event there is any kind of military resistance by the MFDC, they're going to be their allied forces.
Yeah, Mr. Njie, okay, you want to say something?
Yeah, you can ask a question.
Okay. Basically, this is something very sensitive. The former president was from Fonyi end. And you will understand that, before the coming of the current government, actually, things were a little bit tough. And in fact, that led to the coming of the ECOMIC. So when the ECOMIC came, some of them actually were stationed in the Casamance region, that is the Senegal, around the West Coast region. So now the government of the Gambia actually, as I said, have been so much so, passive towards responding to the security needs of the people of West Coast, thinking that, look, even though these people are showing opposition to us, because realizing that place was a stronghold of former President Jammeh, and most of the people there actually are related to Jammeh, and he actually has high number of supporters from that region now. Any security concern coming from Fonyi region, or West Coast region, actually, mostly, the government actually is being very, slow towards responding to their security needs. Don't you think the government also needs to improve on this?
Well, I think that is something that I even wanted to say. And so your question is coming in that line. I think there's a conflict here, conflict between what we call regime security and public security. In the discourse of security sector reform, like I said at the beginning, that countries have started moving from focusing on regime security or state security to human security, and that is what public security is about. In fact, regime security could be differentiated with state security, because if you look at the Jammeh era, the reason why some countries have to experience security sector reform, of course including the Gambia, it's because of the prioritization of regime security. That under Jammeh, regime security was equated to state security. That if you want to remove or attack Jammeh's regime, it's like you are launching an attack against the Gambia. And that is how military governments or military regimes, make people understand the concept of security, state security. For them, they equate regime security to state security, which is not the case. But also there is a dichotomy here, now drawn between how do you ensure public security rather than focusing on regime security or even state security? We have a move. The discourse is moving to human security. That is, you prioritize the security of the people. The security of the people means protect their lives, of course their properties, and so that they have access to proper services. They have access to social services like education, like healthcare. They have access to the environment. The environment is safe. They have access to proper roads and all that. All these are part of human security. But then it seems the reason why I say there's a conflict here is that the presence of economic forces here is to protect the seat of power. It is to protect, to make sure that the regime, the Barrow government, is in power, and of course there is stability so that the Barrow government can continue. We have to understand it from this perspective. They are not necessarily here to say, okay, how do we protect lives and properties of Gambians? That is left in the hands of the Gambian security. The police is responsible for protection of lives and properties. The army is responsible for our external defense. So you have the economic forces that are here to protect the regime. They're interested in protecting the seat of power. That is it. If we are to be honest with each other, that is it. That is why when there are some of these petty crimes and banditry in town, when incidents are reported, security threats or incidents are reported, I do hear people say, what is the essence of economic forces here? But for God and heaven's sake, economic is not here to protect your lives and properties. No. It's here to protect the seat of power. And it's important that people understand this. So that is the conflict that we have here. The government, instead of prioritizing the security of the people, the public security, human security, the government is interested actually in how Barrow can be protected in State House, how the presidency can be protected so that there can be stability. And it boils down to the point of the concept of what? The notion of equating regime security to state security. Because it is also the belief of those in government that any threat to the Barrow government is equivalent to threat to the Gambia as a state. So that is why for them, they focus on how do you ensure that the government of Barrow is safe and secured, economic forces. That is why when Barrow is moving, you see economic forces everywhere. But when Barrow is not moving, do you see them everywhere? You don't see them everywhere like that. But once he's going out, you will see economic forces being stationed in strategic locations or strategic places because they're here to protect the seat of power. So the conflict must be understood. And people also, I understand when people express frustration that the government is not prioritizing their security, especially in the Fonyi end. Yes, the government will not prioritize their security because the government, as far as the economic mission is concerned, is here to protect the seat of power. That is what. So people have to understand it from that angle. But like you said, the government has always been slow in responding to some of these things. And I keep on saying this. We have a government that is reactionary instead of being proactive. It's only when things happen, okay, they will come out and say, we have to solve this, we will investigate, we will look at this. Very good writings. I mean, a lot of, this government has turned to an investigative government. Yes. I'm always making claims, we will investigate, we'll investigate, yes, and nothing comes out of it. But they are not proactive. We have seen, you see, in the Fonyi region, pockets of violence have happened there, incidents have happened there. And I think the government...
In fact, I will not even cut you short. This was in the early part of in the mid-term, part of the 2017. The Fonyi people have a right to accuse the government. There was a mine. There were the mines where the natives of around Kawali villages, a man and his family land their outskirts on a landmine, and they died. And the government said, we're going to investigate. Up to date, there was no investigation. So I want to justify that issue of investigation. The issue of Haruna investigation, that was also somehow... So the issue of this security, the people of Fonyi, they were very concerned. So all these incidences had happened. As recent as the Senegalese attacks on the MFDC post, where Gambians were wounded with live bullets, and nothing, was done about it. So the people, the Alcalo, the village authority or the local authority, arrested and surreptitiously, taken to Senegal. And the government got muted about it. It thanks to the media and, and some very, good individuals in the forces who want to put the government on task that they want to get this guy. If not, who knows what is going to happen. So the people felt, they disappointed with the way, the government is handling the issue, especially when it comes to security. In the foyer, they felt very, disappointed. And therefore, the only approach government should do is to make sure that they also give that leverage for the army. Let the army command also understands that this is an army of the Gambia. It's a Republican army. So Republican army, these are the people who are paying your taxes, take your responsibilities by ensuring that your people are protected. I used to say the army doesn't belong to Barrow, doesn't belong to Jammeh. It is the Gambia army or the Gambia armed forces. So therefore the army, being a commander, you are given responsibilities. You are appointed to protect the people, the public, and the human security of the people into a bigger priority. But if the army is also saying, oh, we're not going to, because you want to take us back to Jammeh era whereby you said, I'm afraid of this. Take responsibilities in as much as you know what you are doing is right to protect the people. Like he said, human security is very key. Before prioritizing weaponry and this and that. And so the people, that is labor market in the region. Just like what is happening in Casamance. Let people get into meaningful development, investment and other issues. If you get into a very meaningful development, you think you'll have that consensus of taking arms against a government. No. It's because when people feel that they are oppressed, they are suppressed and their basic needs are not met, it is going to cause the people to rise up.
It is going to cause the people to rise up. And we have seen in Sierra Leone, people have risen up. And I am only afraid, Mr. Njie, Sierra Leone people have risen up, and that is actually a serious threat. But basically, you're watching us live online, the Peace Talk Show, the weekly program that is brought to you to discuss on issues surrounding our national peace and security. On my right-hand side, I have retired Major Gibba, retired but not tired. On my left-hand side, I have Mr. Essa Njie, a seasoned lecturer at the University of the Gambia. He traumatizes you with assignments. Mr. Njie, what do you think could be a sustainable solution to the security issues regarding this cross-border conflict in terms of the Gambia protecting its security interests in a sustainable manner? What do you think can be the solution?
Well, I think efforts have been put forward since the beginning of this conflict. One prominent organization that has been engaged in finding lasting solution to the Casamance conflict is St. Egidio. It's a faith-based organization, a Catholic organization based in Rome. And of course, I did my research on the role of St. Egidio in conflict resolution, specifically the Casamance conflict. Of course, other actors. But I think the ultimate solution to this is mediation, negotiation, that needs to be prioritized by not only the government of Senegal and the MFDC rebels, but also neighboring countries or neighboring actors like the Gambia and Guinea-Bissau and all other actors that have a role to play or key role to play in bringing lasting solution and stability in Casamance. Just in late 2020, coming to 2021, there was a project we had in Casamance that is specifically looking at the role of young people and women in bringing lasting solution and lasting peace and stability in Casamance region. And when you talk to a lot of people, we call it the voice of women and young people. When you talk to a lot of people, especially the young people, their education has been disrupted as a result of the conflict. Some of them cannot have access to finance. They can't have access to employment opportunities. They can't have, access to proper health care, especially the women folk. The consequences are just there and outright for everyone to see. So I think what is important here is for relevant actors, especially the Gambia, Senegal, the Gambian state, the Senegalese state, the state of Guinea-Bissau, to look at this conflict from a broader perspective of the implications or the consequences it has on the lives of people that live, especially in this area of Casamance and of course its bordering villages in both Guinea-Bissau and Gambia. I mean, it's not over. We know one faction of the Casamance, conflict of the MFDC rebels just last week signed a peace, this week I think, or last week, I think last week Thursday signed a peace deal with the government of Senegal, and of course that is led by Cissa Badiat. I think it's led by Cissa Badiat, a unit of the MFDC rebels, and I think it is about putting down arms. I think these things are possible. Full engagement. It must be a tactic of engagement, not non-engagement, that the government of Senegal must adopt to make sure that they find lasting solution to this conflict. It's all possible. I think all that is needed is for all the three actors, the three states, to play their role, but also other actors like Senegal could still play this role, because it seems that there is that trust and confidence in Senegal if you look at their role in the conflict. Even Salif Sadio has better trust and confidence, because we've had a lot of series of ceasefires that have been signed. But these ceasefires mostly are being violated. The rebels obviously always accuse the Senegalese government of violating those ceasefires. But I think it is important that Gambia as a country also looks at its security interests in this whole conflict equation, the Casamance conflict. To know that obviously Senegal has a strategic security interest when it comes to the Casamance rebellion in the Gambia, but also they must also prioritize their own security, to understand that the lives and properties of the people that live in that Fonyi region, of course the entire Gambia, is important. I always say that for me the problem in Fonyi is not only a Fonyi affair. Fonyi is part of the Gambia. Therefore, I see it as a Gambian affair. And Fonyi is affected. Other areas of the Gambia can be affected. Don't just say, okay, it's Fonyi that is affected. Other parts of the Gambia will not be affected. They can be affected depending on, we have all seen even the refugee influx as a result of the Casamance conflict. Since it started, we have had, refugee crisis in the Gambia, not to a greater extent, not that big magnitude, high magnitude, but we have had this experience. So I think it is important for people to look at it from this perspective. I think going back, still, it all boils down to the prioritization of mediation as far as the conflict is concerned.
Prioritization of mediation. Mr. Major, basically, to me, when you look at characteristic of a mediator, Gambia actually has lost that credibility at some point, because a mediator, you should be neutral, but the rebels actually have have that suspicion on the Gambia government that Gambia government is aiding, the Senegalese to use the Gambia as a launching pad. And then we have seen that previously, some mediations actually took place here. So what do you think the government of the Gambia should do to rebrand itself, to make sure that it stands or stays neutral, to make sure that this whole conflict, the Gambia plays a fundamental role that can bring a lasting solution to the peace and or the conflict in Casamance, so that the lives of the people in the West Coast will not be affected, and in fact the Casamance conflict, which actually pose a regional threat, security threat to the country, the Gambia actually is also solved in a very fashionable manner, instead of using some repressive means. What mediation roles would Gambia do?
I think it depends on the other side of the government, their perception.
Yeah.
We have seen Jammeh era that the Senegalese government were very suspicious of Jammeh's administration, and perhaps, in fact, having that perception, the government of Jammeh was aiding, supplying, and then it was good with the rebels then, I suspect. And again, now the change of government, Barrow's government is also there, and rebels now also pointing fingers at the government of the Gambia, that they have been, because they have seen evidence or traces of the government, reactionaries, and been, perhaps siding with the Senegalese authorities. For the Gambia's position here, being a key actor in all this, due to our borders, and the people, like Essa said, the human security aspect, government should ensure this is no longer a state, or no longer a regime security, but a public or human security is at stake. So therefore, the government should be seen proactive, be neutral in the sense that any conflict that comes in, you are being so neutral, it's impartial, not to be neutral, not matter of neutral, but to be impartial in dealing with when it comes to this kind of crisis. And our civil society organizations are also very key because they're dealing with the societies, and they have to also come into play. We've said all this all along, but we've also forgotten to bring the issue of these border demarcations. It's also becoming a threat in this Casamance conflict. Not long ago, the Senegalese government have came and then they bulldoze areas that at some point, they likely entering into the Gambian territory because they want to make a way to avoid the rebels hosting. And they have, after having occupied all the positions that were held by the MFDC, so they are put up. So I believe that should have been harmonized. The government of the Gambia and the government of Senegal, when they're coming into some kind of development, they should ensure the Gambian government. There was a commission set for border commission, which I think died long ago. The issue of Dasilame issue, the encroaching. So the government must make sure that they be very proactive to make sure that, like he said, the people of the region in that area are giving assurance that their safety lies in not a matter of proclamations, but to be seen, to also support the military battalions in the Funi to ensure that there is safety. They giving them to patrol the areas, that there is peace assure the people, like what they are doing. The MP of Funi, they are making an outreach to the communities. They also need to sensitize the people that this is the Gambian security. Then the people of that line also know that. Let them not also entertain, harboring anything that could affect their safety and security. So that's very important.
It's very important. I'm afraid our time is actually exhausted, and it's almost 5:30, and we have heard from retired Major Gibba, and we have also heard from Mr. Essa Njie, the Peace Talk Show, a weekly program that is brought to discuss on issues surrounding our national peace and security. We actually were looking at consequences of the Casamance conflict on the Gambia security, and we have had adequate or sufficient discussion here with Major Gibba and Mr. Njie on the issues regarding this Senegal security saga or Casamance security saga in relation to the Gambia issue. We thank you very much for watching us, and we thank our able technician and Mr. Njie and Major Gibba. We thank you very much for coming. Our viewers and followers, I also thank you for visiting me birthday, and thank you for your gifts and support. See you next week. We are hoping that we will have the Economic Command here to evaluate the economic mission in the Gambia. Mr. Njie and Major Gibba, thank you very much. The time is exhausted. God bless you.
Back on the bench, we educate, advocate, and inform you on peace, security, and dangers related to violence. Every week, we have interesting topics to discuss. Our guests are highly informed. Gambia is the homeland of peace. Let's teach the world peace. Follow Alassana Justice Diallo every other Friday from 4 to 5 p.m. For sponsors and partners, contact 369-0164 or 272-3819.